Alright, what's up everybody? So I was going to make an elementary OS review last week, but I didn't get to it, so yeah, I've been very busy recently with school since this school year is getting to an end. So I've been really busy with that, making sure my grades are up in that so I can actually get through to next year. So yeah, that's been something I've been really busy with, so there's not going to be an upload schedule for the rest of this month. I might get like 2 more videos or something out this month, but probably not very many. And you might have to wait for the elementary OS review video. You might have to wait till next month to see that. So yeah. So in this video, I decided that I'm going to make a sort of laid back video where I didn't have to think of what I was going to make before the video. So I decided I'm going to make a video on why I use Linux, specifically what got me into using Linux. So yeah, that'll be pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, so I started using Linux. So I think I said earlier in one of my videos it was 3 years ago. I don't think that was right. I think I started Linux 2 years ago. I think I checked it out once or twice 3 years ago, but the first time I started like really checking it out, like actually full on dual booting instead of just plugging in a live USB, was just after 17.04 got released. So probably exactly 2 years. So let's start at the beginning of my little computer journey that I've been having for the past 4 years, maybe? Yeah, 4 years, I think. 5 years, actually. No, 4 years. 4 years. It was 4 years. So, it all starts when I stopped doing the conventional schools, going to a conventional school here in the U.S., and I started doing online school. So I needed a computer for doing online school, so my mom and dad both let me and my brother use their MacBooks. Now, their MacBooks weren't very, very good at all. They were 2009 MacBooks, not even a MacBook Pro. It was just a 2009 MacBooks. And they were not unibody, which made it much harder to upgrade them when I did upgrade them. And I think I permanently got a screw stuck in the wrong hole on my mom's MacBook when I ended up trying to upgrade that one. So I didn't necessarily put it back together correctly, but it was working still. So yeah, that's sort of where it started off. And then the second computer I got was a 2011 MacBook Pro that was my grandma's, and that was a very good computer, and it still is a very good computer. So I think right now it is about the age that the 2009 one was when I started using it, and it works better comparatively. It works much better than that one did. It has been upgraded. The hard drive has been upgraded to a new hard drive, and the RAM has been upgraded to, I think it's 8 gigabytes. And it works really good. It has dedicated graphics. I think it uses the AMD Radeon 6770M. But it's a really good computer. Currently my mom and dad are using it because my dad's computer is about to die. I'm going to be getting the hard drive once he's got it set up with everything set up on the other MacBook, the 2011 MacBook. But regardless, you guys don't need to know about that hard drive thing yet. So yeah, so after that, I think I was using that for about a year maybe. So up until about 3 years ago. So I think I started Linux actually 2.5 years ago. Maybe around 3 years ago. Because I used that for a year. And then around before my birthday, but around that time, my parents got me a Windows PC. $700. Now, they got me a pre-built. It was a Skytech system. I do recommend those if anyone is looking for a pre-built, because I have personally had a good experience with them. Although, as with many other pre-built PC distributors, they kind of did not spend very much money on the power supply. So it's a 500 watt. I think altogether everything in my system should be taking up about 550 watts. So I do need to upgrade that power supply very soon. So I'm going to be doing that. But I have also upgraded the RAM from 8 gigabytes to 22 gigabytes. And it runs in dual channel. Because my motherboard is apparently one of those that support running dual channel, which is 2 sticks of RAM, and then you can put the other 2 in and it doesn't necessarily matter. Maybe it does, but it says it's running in dual channel on the in the UEFI, so that is also pretty cool. And it uses a GTX 1050 Ti and AMD FX 6300. And there are 3 hard drives in there, and that has come in very handy because I do not necessarily back up everything before I reinstall an operating system. I just move everything I need to one of the other hard drives, and that has worked perfectly fine. So yeah, that's pretty cool. 3 hard drives in there. I think overall 2.5 terabytes of storage. So it's a pretty nice computer. Yeah, a few things I don't like. The power supply is not modular, or modular power supply. Yeah, it's not modular. But who cares? That's just fancy stuff. So I might be getting a modular power supply, since that's really the only ones that show up on Amazon if you look up 750 watt power supply. So yeah, that is basically the computer that I'm running right now. So yeah, from now on, I'm just going to talk about, since I got that, what was going on with the operating system. So it started with Windows 10, obviously. Windows 10 Pro. I still have that license connected to my email, I think. Hopefully I do. But I'm not totally sure. I might have done something to mess that up, but I'm not going to go into that. So yeah, I was running Windows 10 Pro. I really got into technology when I had the MacBook, 2011 MacBook Pro. I really got into wanting to learn coding and stuff like that. When I got the Windows machine, I really started getting into gaming more because I could game more. And many of the games that I had already liked on the MacBook Pro could run at ultra high settings and stuff like that. Things like KOTOR, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. They could run at full graphics. I mean, they could on that, but I think Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 lagged a little bit. I think that was just a problem with the operating system, though. But it was very interesting because games that I'd been playing on low graphics for so long, like Unturned, all of a sudden I could play them on ultra settings, and it was really cool. Although that's not necessarily the case now, especially with the AAA games, because many of them are getting up there in graphics again. But it was really good when I got it, and I was really excited. So that was pretty cool. And so that's when I really started getting into technology as well. I got even more into it. I've taken this computer apart like 5 times now and put it back together. Okay, you know what? Let's backtrack a little bit. So while I was still using the MacBook Pro 2011, I did get a very, very old PC from my mom's work. So it was running a GTX, I think it was GTX. NVIDIA 210. I think it was GTX 210. I don't know. But that was not necessarily better for gaming, but I could still play stuff like Minecraft, Windows 10, stuff like that. So I did play those on it. And I did get a little bit more into computer hardware then. So let's go back forward to with the current PC that I have. So I really got into the technology behind computers, and I started looking into Linux after I saw a Theo Joe video on YouTube about Linux gaming, and I had already known Linus Tech Tips did a video on Linux gaming and stuff, and I was getting more and more interested in Linux. So I decided to dual boot. Well, first I was checking out the live CD. I checked out the live CD for Ubuntu 16.04. I think, yeah, 16.10 wasn't out yet. This computer's, now that I think about it, I probably got this computer about 3 years ago. I don't know. My perception of what year was what is kind of messed up right now. I'd have to go back and check that real quick. But I got Ubuntu 16.4 onto a USB and plugged it into my computer. Tried out the live CD stuff a little bit, and I was playing around with it, and it was pretty cool. I liked it. And I liked it enough that I think it was like a month or 2 months later, 2 years ago actually, so probably a couple more than 2 months later, I decided to dual boot. So I got 17.04, plugged it into my computer, and I installed it onto a separate drive, but I don't know why, but Grub was installed onto my Windows drive. And you might know why that was a problem. So after a while, I was getting annoyed of having to go through Grub to boot. So I deleted Ubuntu, because I thought that would delete Grub, but no, because Grub wasn't on that same hard drive. So yeah, I couldn't boot into Windows. So luckily, I still had the installer for Ubuntu, so I just plugged that in and reinstalled Ubuntu. Now, somehow, I was able to get rid of Grub. I think I just wiped everything and installed Windows. So I was back on just Windows. It was pretty cool. I stayed on just Windows for quite a while. After probably about 4 months or so, 5 months, I decided to, I don't even know what led me to do this, but I was just like, you know what? F Microsoft. I'm just going to Ubuntu. I'm just going to Linux. I'm going to stay on Linux forever. But that didn't necessarily happen, as you probably know. So plugged in Ubuntu, I wiped all the drives. I didn't even think about backing anything up. I just wiped everything and installed Ubuntu. And because this was, I think it was during the summer when I did this, I wasn't doing school at the time, so there was no problem with that, and I didn't necessarily need anything backed up. I was just able to re-download everything. Took a while, but I was able to re-download everything. And this was, I decided to get Ubuntu 16.04 because it was an LTS release. I didn't necessarily know at the time that LTS releases actually worked better. Now I do know that non-LTS releases are, in my opinion, the beta for an LTS, and only really for enthusiasts. So, and not made to be used on a main system. So, yeah, now I do know that difference. Back then I didn't, and I was just, I'd call myself lucky for choosing the LTS. But that was pretty cool. I liked Ubuntu 16.04. At the time, I didn't know what a desktop operating system was, or desktop environment was. And honestly, I don't know a lot of the terminology still that people use in Linux. Up until recently, I didn't necessarily know what the heck the difference between snap and flatpak was until I went and looked it up. I had vaguely known that it was like a package, sort of like the DMGs on Mac, where you can just click it and it'll install, or the executables on Windows. So I vaguely thought it was something like that, but I had not necessarily used them because not necessarily known what I was using, because everything pretty much in the Ubuntu store is a snap, and it doesn't necessarily tell you that it's a snap. Well, it does, but I wasn't looking. I wasn't looking down where it said snap store. So that was an interesting time in my life with Ubuntu 16.04. So I didn't necessarily know anything about Ubuntu. I just went all out, just downloaded it. I thought it would be fun. And it really was. And I really got into Linux. It was really fun. I started listening to a bunch of Linux podcasts. I think the main ones I listened to was the Ubuntu podcast and Destination Linux. That was really fun, and it was a really fun time. I don't know why it was so fun, but it was a really fun time. And I eventually had to go back to Windows for school because there was something I needed in the second semester of school that year. But that was interesting, and I had to go back to Windows. So I went back to Windows, got Windows 10 Pro installed, and I was using Windows. All the way up until a couple months ago, I was using Windows. So when I was using Windows, I was just doing a lot of gaming again. And I was doing school. I wasn't necessarily even keeping up in the Linux community. I don't know why. But I wasn't. I did keep up on a few things, such as gaming on Linux, because I've been making some huge strides, and literally Proton came out right after. The Steam Proton stuff came out right after I left Linux, like probably the day after I decided to install Windows. So I had been using Windows up until about 2 months ago or so. And I was looking at some stuff with Linux, and I remembered Proton was a thing. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to try out Linux again. So I went to the website, downloaded Ubuntu 18.04, unplugged from my computer, plugged it back in, booted from the USB, and I installed 18.04, Ubuntu 18.04. And that basically just leads to here we are, right to where we are right now, and got Ubuntu 18.04 installed onto my machine here. And that is basically my journey of getting into Linux. And I would say the whole reason I went into Linux was because I like technology, and yeah, that's it. I just like technology, all of it. I like all of it. And I thought Linux was cool. I didn't necessarily think of it as the hacker operating system, which a lot of people seem to have that opinion on it, especially a lot of older people who have heard of Linux. But younger people who know about Linux, they just think it's another operating system. I didn't necessarily know about distros until I first started looking into downloading Ubuntu 17.04 as a dual boot. And that was interesting because I had not known about that. The fragmentation stuff was pretty daunting at first, but I was able to get past it. I just went with people's recommendations on stuff. And now I'm starting to learn more about the how the Linux ecosystem works, and it's pretty cool. So I'm not necessarily using Linux because of the security or privacy or anything that it offers in that realm of things, and I'm not using Linux necessarily because of its stability. I would say I'm using Linux because a lot of things in Linux are bleeding edge compared to something in Windows, because Windows is made to work with so much old stuff that it has become almost bloated in many ways. I think the entire settings ecosystem from Windows XP is still built into Windows 10. Basically, they made it so anyone can use Windows 10 very easily. And that has made Windows 10 a very big operating system and very resource-heavy operating system. And I would argue that it is more resource-heavy than Mac OS. Another reason I would say that I got into Linux was because I think around that time when I decided to install Linux, I was looking into Hackintosh and seeing what I could do with Mac OS on my computer if I could install it and if it would work properly. That answer was no, it wouldn't work properly. But it really got me thinking. I was like, wait, so is there an operating system that is similar to Mac OS in any way whatsoever, more similar than Windows? And I vaguely remembered hearing that Mac OS and Linux were both loosely based on Unix. And that really interested me in getting into Linux, because I had used the macOS terminal and stuff. And still, in my opinion, Linux is more similar to macOS than it is to Windows, at least on the Ubuntu side of things. So, yeah, I'd say that is all for this video. Yeah, that's a pretty long video, but yeah, that's all for this video, and I hope I will see you all in the next video.